My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Today on the Expect Miracles podcast, we have Roberto Andrade. Roberto is an acupuncturist out of Florham Park, New Jersey. He is extremely passionate and amazing at what he does. Roberto is a true healer and is able to help facilitate healing in people with some serious neurological issues, Lyme's disease, chronic pain, nutrient deficiencies, thyroid issues, and much more. He uses a variety of techniques such as acupuncture, dry needling, cold laser therapy, muscle testing, vial testing, and more to help the nervous system heal. Roberto also touches on the 5 key elements to help you thrive in life. So if you feel like you are always tired, in pain, and not feeling well, you may want to consider the Big 5. Please welcome Roberto Andrade. Roberto, how you doing today?
Doing great, thanks.
Thank you for coming on. We share a lot of mutual patients. It's amazing things you're able to help do for them and heal them up. And so I'm very grateful to refer to you. And so how are you doing today, Roberto?
Doing great, man. It's an honor to be here. Been listening to your podcast. I think you do some great things. You got some great people coming on here.
I appreciate that. Roberto, where are you from originally?
I'm a Jersey boy, born and bred.
Nice.
I was born in Summit and just kind of raised up around here in the Morris County
Beautiful.
area.
And so what were you into growing up?
Growing up, I'm a product of the 80s, so like Ninja Turtles, cars, that kind of stuff. When I was in elementary school and stuff, I started martial arts, and that really got me into the whole Asian philosophy thing in high school.
Nice.
I studied a lot of Taoism, Buddhism, meditation kind of stuff.
That's really cool. What kind of martial arts were you into growing up? There's a variety like you can get into.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, it gets nuts out there. I started with Okinawan karate called Ishin Kempo with this guy, Chris Gertica, who's out in Convent Station. And I started that when I was 6. He's kind of like a second father to me because I just never stopped. And so I still continue that to this day. And then for about 10, 15 years on and off, I was doing the Afro-Brazilian martial art of capoeira.
Okay.
I actually taught a little bit of that to get me through acupuncture school at one point.
Okay.
I've had a few stints where I was in China and I studied Tai Chi and a martial art called Xingyi.
That is awesome. How long were you over in China for?
Cumulative total time of about a year, kind of like broken up. It was great. Traveled a lot over there. It's changed a lot every time I go back. It's different.
Yeah.
Different landscape.
Did you go over there like as like a study abroad thing while you were in acupuncture school, or you just kind of went down there on your own?
I started when I was in my undergrad. I went out there to study just language and culture. When you go there, you'll see people are doing stuff in the park or around the corner. They're always doing stuff like Tai Chi meditation, exercises,
Nice.
Qigong, that kind of stuff. And so you just kind of seek it out. It's really easy to find anything. And then I've gone back a few times. I went back a few years ago to a place called Wudong Mountain, which is like the birthplace of Kung Fu and all that. And
Nice.
I stayed at a monastery there with a friend of mine. We were there for a few months training Xingyi, which is one of the major influences on Okinawan karate, actually.
Nice. And so how did you get into the healing profession?
I graduated Chinese and physics from my undergrad, and my physics thesis kind of ruined it for me. It's one of those things where you have such a love for something, you get too academic about it. It like takes it away.
Yeah.
And I was just stuck in a lab the whole time, and it just kind of like ruined it for me. And so when I graduated, I was kind of actually hell-bent on going to China to either teach English, or I was going to stay here in the States, get a doctorate and teach Chinese. I was like, give me one of the two.
Okay, so it wasn't even, you weren't even looking to get into like healing or anything as of that point?
At that point, no. My mother was a foreign language teacher, and that was like a big influence on me. But I took a year off of college, and I was just teaching karate kind of full time, trying to figure things out. And something clicked in my head where I was kind of like, all the legendary martial artists they were also the village healer.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that like kind of really resonates with me. And I love
Yeah.
working with my hands too. And I was like, all right, so what kind of healer do I want to be? And I looked into becoming a chiropractor. I looked into osteopathy. But at the time, I was just getting into some deeper aspects of meditation and thinking about meridians. And the more I thought about it, the more acupuncture seemed to fit the bill. So I asked around, interviewed a few guys, and there's two basic schools that are like the Yale and Harvard of acupuncture schools. And they're on the East Coast. It's NISA, which is up in Boston area, and PCOM, which is the Pacific College of Oriental Medicine, which is in New York City. And I was like, all right, great. I'll check them both out. I checked out the New York campus, and I didn't even bother with NISA. I just loved everyone there. Everything clicked together. I loved their philosophy and the fact that they were very heavy on biomedicine, and it wasn't just sticking to a specific dogma of acupuncture or TCM or traditional Chinese medicine is called.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of schools, and it's not a bad thing, but it's kind of like kung fu style. I look, martial arts is a big thing in my head, so everything is like kung fu styles, right? So you have like all these different styles of acupuncture, and I'm just always looking for like the best one. So
you probably knew a lot about the philosophy of it just from martial arts, right? Did that translate over pretty well?
Absolutely. Speaking Chinese helped a lot, actually. So it's really interesting going through acupuncture school where the majority of people don't speak a lick of Chinese. You have all these terms that you're trying to translate over.
Kind of already had it.
I'm like, okay, no, yeah, I get it. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
How important is philosophy in the acupuncture world? Because everybody, when I was looking into chiropractic school, people are like, you don't want to go there. They don't have good philosophy. And me being very naive about chiropractic, I was like, I don't even know what you're telling me right now. And then when I got to the school, I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So how is it like acupuncture? Is it very because some chiropractic techniques won't even talk to the other chiropractic techniques. It's that dogmatic and.
Yeah, no, it's the exact same thing in acupuncture school. It's like third graders in the sandbox. It's, it's like, there's a lot of dogma. And when I first started acupuncture school, I was trying to adhere to what I thought was the closest to something like a monastic Taoist. Everything has to be zen out. I want the quietest room possible. I want to prepare each point before I needle it. And it was like a really great feeling for me. And it's so funny because I look back on it now and I like completely different.
Yeah.
I always say I was raised by chiropractors.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because I went to PCOM and it was my anatomy and physiology people were chiropractors. My orthopedics guys were chiropractors. All of these people were chiropractors. And so they have this influence on you of just like, you have your philosophy behind things. You don't necessarily want to push that on people, but at the base of everything, it's medicine. And, the biggest thing is you're trying to approach the person as holistically as possible. Some of that is, in acupuncture, they do everything. I say acupuncture, but it's really Chinese medicine, I guess.
Okay, that's interchangeable then.
Yeah, I mean, for the purpose of the interview, I guess it's interchangeable because a person who does Oriental medicine or Chinese medicine, you're looking at lifestyle, diet, herbs, acupuncture. I know you guys have talked about cupping and stuff like that on this podcast.
Also from a chiropractor's perspective, though.
But pretty similar. I mean, a lot of it's the same thing. And, it's a lot of the words are interchangeable. And I think that's a big part of what I've done with my practice is try to translate things for people. There's a long history of there's a long history of Chinese medicine. I mean, we're talking about thousands of years, but in most countries, especially out of the US, medicine was practiced as part of a family tradition. It was like passed down from father to son or uncle or to nephew kind of thing. A lot of that stuff wasn't written down, competition and things like that. And so, especially in China and Japan, where they have a love of poetry and metaphors, a lot of the processes that they're describing for the body are things like, the wind comes into the body and the righteous chi comes up to meet it. And, they're talking about you catching a cold, immune system coming to come in and what happens. So they just have all these descriptive words and things that, interestingly enough, you think people wouldn't take literally, but they do.
Yeah.
And so I spend a lot of my time trying to reverse the process and ground things as much as possible for everybody.
Yeah. And I'm sure you found out a ton when you actually got into practice, and because you're seeing it live and you got to kind of rearrange things in that order too.
Absolutely. I always tell people, and this is true anytime I talk to any profession, right, is if you treat out of the textbook, you're almost destined to fail.
Yeah.
And you need that clinical experience. A big influence of mine was, I have to give a shout out to my main mentor, Ken Andes, up in Ramsey, New Jersey. He was my main mentor and like a huge friend of mine. He introduced me into the world of applied kinesiology and muscle testing.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely want to talk about that too.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how you can apply that. A lot of it's the same, like the contact reflex stuff, the CRA, but he got his skills from several different people who are chiropractors, some of the ULAN group out in Florida, George Gonzalez out in LA, who's been also a huge influence on me with the quantum neurology stuff, and Steve Kaufman, who does the pain neutralization stuff in Colorado.
Are they chiropractors?
Yeah, they're all chiropractors. Steve's also an acupuncturist, so he
Okay.
talks about meridians and things like that. But his take on it is interesting. He talks about almost like taking the meridians and overlaying them with the dermatomes. So just
Okay.
like patches of skin rather than highways of electricity.
Okay.
But he does great. And the thing with all three of them is they all had very specific forms of muscle testing that really hone it into a very subtle and very irrefutable test. You know, it's one of those things where there's no gray area. And it's funny, you take that and then you go to a bunch of seminars and I'm like, wow, I don't think these guys really...
There might be missing something.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff. But growing up with that medically, I think has been a big influence on me because then I can really see, you know, what works, what doesn't work. So my practice tends to be very eclectic. And I tend to think of the different acupuncture styles as different tools, right? So it's like you might have ear acupuncture for one thing, or you might do something like you guys might call dry needling or trigger points for something else. Or we might do like meridian work, like the dermatome stuff to get some internal medicine components to it.
Definitely.
And you kind of let the testing guide you in a way.
So that's pretty much first and foremost in your office. You kind of let the muscle testing guide you into what that person might need.
Correct. The body, you know, I'll say this over and over again, the body is like immensely complicated, but it's meant to run on simple instructions. So you just need that like entry point into what the person needs the most. And I've seen anything cause everything. And it's one of those things where I just like, I don't care what it is. I just need to know what it is.
Yeah. What's your yes and your no for your muscle testing?
That's where I kind of break out of that. So I'm not so much...
Right. Because I know there's a ton of different ways to do it.
Yeah. So I break out of... This is one of the ways that we've kind of been able to break out of the mainstream stuff is it's less so much asking questions and more about seeing a change in response. It's like the old Sesame Street thing where it's like, one of these is not like the other one. Okay. So, right, you're talking to the body in binary. So it's like, okay, like this is on, this is on, this is on, this is on, this is not on. Okay, so let's take the signal that's not on.
And how are you telling what if it's on or off?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
So like there's a strong response or a weak response. I guess you could use those words. People tend to use the word like a lock.
You're right.
The body will lock.
But are you doing muscle testing like that, like raising the arm and down, or what are you looking at to gauge that response?
It depends. So if we're just doing pure muscle testing and not apply kinesiology for a specific muscle group or a specific isolated muscle, then honestly, it doesn't matter. I've had people who were completely paralyzed from the collarbone down, and I'm just sitting there testing their head movements, trying to get that resistance.
Okay.
One of my very first teachers in applied kinesiology was this guy named Jay, and he was also an acupuncturist. He went to PCOM as well. At PCOM, we weren't allowed to do muscle testing, right, in the clinic. So a lot of traditional TCM, they check your tongue, they check your pulse, and then they ask you like 10 questions.
Yep.
So tongue pulse, 10 questions. And Jay's like, man, I really want a muscle test here. So what he did was he actually tested the lat muscle. So the person was laid out and it looked like he was taking their pulse.
Yeah.
And so
he was doing a little muscle test.
Yeah, it was good. So you find ways to sneak it in. And as long as you can find that the nervous system can give you a shift, you know, and you're sensitive to it, you've sensitized to it, then you can kind of use anything for that. Because really you're looking less for the muscle and more for the neurological response.
Absolutely.
And so for me, I use a lot of vials in my office, vial specific testing. You know, one of the things we've looked at over the years is the acupuncture points less so much for therapy and more for diagnosis.
Okay.
So
I'm not familiar with the vial testing at all.
Vial testing, yeah. So the vial testing comes into play with, let's say there's certain reflex, like with contact reflex analysis, you're contacting different areas of the body. They might be over an organ that you're getting pressure on, or different points might be representative of different functional things, like how's your body regulate blood pressure under stress? How's your body regulating testosterone? How's your body regulating stomach acid, right? It's not like too much stomach acid or too low. You're just seeing like what the dysfunction is there. Sometimes though, the reflex points are on top of like multiple different structures, right? So it's like there's a pH point that's on your stomach that could also be if you have rib issues, or you have like your abs are sore from doing too many crunches that day, or you have an intestinal problem, or you've got a radiating liver issue. So you don't know, and the specificity comes out when you start seeing relationships to those different points. But with the vial, they're basically homeopathic signals of the different things. So I have homeopathic pH signal, and then you put the vial on the body.
Okay. So,
and then you get a response from that.
gotcha. So if they're like deficient in something and you put that vial next to them, it could gauge a response that the body might need it or might not, or
right. There's like a dysfunction, right? So in the case of like a nutrient deficiency, let's say we have like a kit, all the minerals, right? So you slap the kit on and you see if there's a shift in the change, right? So it's like, let's say the body has a strong muscle, you put the minerals on, it goes weak, something in there is not congruent with their system, right? There's some sort of issue. And then through some further analysis, you can figure out if they have too much of something or they need something nutritionally, or do we give it them in form of supplement, or what do they have to do?
Yeah.
And then everybody has different algorithms for that kind of stuff. Ken and I have tried to really over the years hone the best kind of algorithm. With muscle testing, a lot of it's like that question and answer. And so a lot of it is like, you want the best answer possible. So how can we ask the best question?
Right.
That's the question that's most pertinent to this person's imbalances. And if there's multiple, like what are the relationship and how can we get their whole body up and running? Like you guys say, like power the system back on.
Do you have to be careful with the language you use then?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it is going back to just, I might say, okay, I'm seeing something in regards to your thyroid here. I don't want you to freak out, because people immediately go to Dr. Google and they're like, all right, shoot, I have thyroid cancer. This sucks.
Yeah, the worst case scenario always pops up in that instance.
I'm like, no. No. Your thyroid just needs a little bit of salt. Go salt your food.
Yeah. So Roberto, I kind of want to lay out your tool belt here and get into what kind of patients you've been seeing in your office and cases you've been able to help, because I know you see some pretty serious stuff and you're really able to help them with some serious stuff. And I remember I had one patient in here that said they went to you and her sinuses were like swelled shut. And she said you put a needle on the left side and the right side and at the top of her head, and they just completely started pouring out, like draining. I thought that was very amazing. So I know you see a lot of cool things and you're able to fix a lot of things. So what kind of things do you see in your office and how are you able to fix it and heal people up?
So I think of myself more like a mechanic. If you come in and I can find reflexes to shift, most likely I can help. And I have very rarely, probably over the course of my career, I've only turned away like 3 or 4 cases that I honestly didn't think could heal. Like I'm a big believer that the body can fix it. And that's essentially what we're doing for every case here. A lot of people go to acupuncture for pain. They always think, like, okay, acupuncture, that's for back pain and for migraines or something. That's it, right? I think I hear somebody uses it to get pregnant. And that's it. For me, I have a lot of patients that want to ditch their primary health care to come to me because they feel like I'm addressing them as a whole. And while I don't advocate that, because you still need to have a primary for multiple reasons, I do tend to run the gamut for everything. I mean, I tend to treat the earliest patient I've ever seen, or the youngest patients I've ever seen, was 2 weeks old. And the oldest was 102. And they come in for everything. Like they'll come in for any kind of pain. I treat a lot of neurological disorders. A third of my practice is pediatrics. Nice. I have a lot of women's health people, but a lot of my practice, I would say the bulk of my practice is come to be what I term medical throwaways. Okay. Or like medical wreckage is what I coin it, because you have these people. It was like 2-3 years ago, I tried to survey all of my backlog of patients, and we found that I was on average like the 8th or 9th person that they had seen for whatever it was.
You're almost the last stop.
Yeah, and a lot of times it was the last stop.
Yeah,
in a
which
good way.
Yeah.
And so you have these people that bounce around, and everybody has their own perspective, and everybody tries to work with their own tools. A lot of people get angry at other doctors for not understanding things, but a lot of times it's their training and what they're exposed to that's kind of guiding their decisions. It's hard to.
They want to help. It's just
they became doctors for a reason, But they come to my office and they're kind of like destroyed. I mean, they're nutrient deficient up the wazoo. Their nervous system can't organize itself against the common anything. Yeah, they're riddled with stress. They don't know how to handle it. They're calling for help, or they've been through a lot of other naturopathic people. And I can't tell you how many people come to my office with like a garbage bag full of supplements that they don't know what to do with. Yeah. I tend to be the minimalist, and I'm like, all right, let's weed through all this crap or get rid of it and start fresh and just take what you need. Let me guide you step by step, build you up, get you back up to healing. Which doesn't happen overnight either. Yeah. I mean, for some of those cases, it really doesn't. Really why sometimes my practice is kind of hard to get into, because I have these cases where, the healing process is going to be months or sometimes longer, and it kind of builds up the backlog backlog sometimes. But, I do have a nice peppering of different types of people that come in for, it's nice to have like the chronic Lyme disease person. And then the next room, I'm seeing someone who just stubbed their toe.
Yeah.
You got somebody who's fighting off a cold or a kid who's got a stomach ache. It's fun to me. I say I'm an acupuncturist because that's my license, but I really think of myself as more of maybe like a naturopathic type physician who has acupuncture as one of his tools. People come in and I would just say, it's a nutritional thing, or you don't even need acupuncture. So don't worry about your fear of needles because you don't need it.
Yeah. And so you've had good success with Lyme's disease?
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
When you look at the whole Lyme's disease process, it's probably going to get me in hot water, but when you look at the whole Lyme disease process, I've seen amazing things. There was a big shift in my thinking back in 2012, 2013, when I met this woman that came in and she was just trying to lose weight. She was a little overweight, and she had just been to one of the prominent Lyme disease specialists in the area and was told that she had Lyme as well. And she was given this enormous protocol to do. And she thought to herself, she said, I feel like I want to lose weight and get a little bit healthier before I go through this. And I don't think I have the strength to go through all the IVs and all these supplements and all these therapies. So she took a hiatus from work and she rented a cabin in the Catskills.
Nice.
And she took a page out of this movie called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead.
Okay.
Which is about this guy from Australia who basically gets put on a vegetable juice diet for 2 months, and he loses weight, gets off his medications. And so that's what she did. And she basically was on a juice fast for 2 months. She came back, she lost the weight, she looked great. She went back and redid her blood work, and all of her stuff was gone.
Wow.
All of her Lyme was gone. All of her co-infections were gone. She was not showing up with having any toxins. All of her biomarkers were great. All of her reflexes with the muscle testing were great. And I was like, what do you do? She's like, nothing. I went. I was like, all right, I get it now. Like, I get it. Like the body's built to do all these amazing things. And as long as you can organize it and give it the resources, it'll do it. Looking at things from that perspective has been a boon for me because I don't fear that stuff anymore. Come in and it's not a complicated case anymore. It's like, all right, well, it's just another thing. Let's just give the body what it needs.
Yeah. That's amazing. So you mentioned you do regular needling, dry needling. I know you do some laser therapy as well.
Yes.
So let's just get into all the good stuff you've been doing over there.
Yeah. So the needling stuff is great. So I do, that was the worst statement. The needling stuff is great. As said by an acupuncturist. So I do multiple different types of needling. I find that, I'm sure you get this too with the chiropractic, right? So there's people who are super sensitive and you can barely touch them or like look at their vertebra and then they move and adjust.
Yeah.
And then there's people who you need to like break out the jackhammer and hit them right. So the same thing runs through acupuncture. There's certain people who, especially for orthopedic stuff, I find that stuff like dry needling, which for those of you who don't know, it's basically when you're going in with an acupuncture needle and you're getting the muscle to trigger or jump and move. For those medically inclined, that you're just hitting that like Golgi tendon reflex. So getting that contraction in the muscle, trying to reset the muscle neurologically so that it can reset back to a normal relaxed state or a more normalized state. And that's great. But a lot of people aren't comfortable with that because sometimes it hurts. It's uncomfortable and this and that. A lot of times I use these types of needle called sujak needles, which comes from Korean hand acupuncture, which is like reflexology. And they're these tiny little baby needles that they'll actually even use for acupuncture facials and stuff in some spas.
Oh, nice.
And they're the most painless things possible. And you can use those for a variety of different things. So we'll bridge into the traditional AK stuff where a lot of the different muscles have the correlation to an organ or a meridian or that kind of thing. And you can use the tiny little needles to flick them in, and which are painless, and get the muscles to turn on and reset and that kind of stuff. A lot of times with that, I will use that in conjunction with an arthrostim.
Okay.
That's my jackhammer.
Yeah.
Very specifically to stimulate some of the points or just get a few things to tap back into place. I don't use a lot of point acupuncture. A lot of people get surprised when they come in. They're like, man, I was expecting to be like on my back, looking like the Hellraiser, the dude from Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Needles all over my body. I'm not going to be able to move. And they come in and I flick 4 needles in the back of their wrist, 1 in their toe, and then I leave them for like 10 minutes. One of the things also we've noticed is that when you're doing acupuncture, because you're dealing with the nervous system, the changes are like instant, right? So So I would say like 60% of what you're going to get from the acupuncture is in those first like 2 seconds. And then 85% is going to be in those first like 2 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, maybe that's like 95%. And then if you stay for like an hour, hour and a half, maybe you get like the full 100.
Okay.
So most people don't have time. They're dropping their kids off at soccer and stuff like that. So they come in, do some acupuncture, they chill for like 10, 15 minutes and they're out the door. It gives me plenty of time to get work done, answer any questions and things like that. And then for those needle phobes, I'd use cold laser therapy a lot. Cold laser stuff, a lot of people might be familiar with it, a lot of people not, but it looks kind of like a glorified laser pointer, but for medical use. There's different frequencies you can use for different shifts in the body that you're trying to trigger, right? So that you'll see mostly red because most people are trying to stimulate something. Yeah. But a lot of people have found over the past 2-3 years that something in the green spectrum is actually a little bit easier to use because instead of having to try and figure out whether you have to upregulate or downregulate something, the green laser tends to what we call just harmonize it. So if it needs to upregulate, it'll upregulate. If it needs to downregulate, it'll downregulate. So a lot of times I'll just use a green laser. Do you do the meridian points off of that with the laser, or how do you know where to go with the laser? Yeah, so we'll do the acupuncture points for that. We've been able to map out specific areas of the body. So you can do a combination of using the laser. This is where George Gonzalez in LA really came in because his biggest thing is using muscle testing for neurological recognition. So basically, if the body can recognize that it's been through a change, then a lot of times, more likely than not, it will go through the change. Mm-hmm. So we use the muscle testing while we're doing the laser work to get the body to recognize and for us to understand when the body's kind of accepted the signal. So what it'll look like is me putting the laser on a reflex point or an acupuncture point or some sort of, but usually it's on the hand that I'm using. And I'll be muscle testing at the same time. And it'll be like, let's say just for conversation's sake, it's weak, right? So the signal's weak, boom, and it strengthens up. All of a sudden, the body's like accepted the signal. And a lot of people will sense what's called an arc or an autonomic reaction where they'll get like sense of like buzzing down their body or break sweat a little bit or they'll feel something, right? And then it's like, okay, boom, we just enacted a change. Then we go back, we recheck what it was we were trying to change to make sure it actually happened. And then you move on. Pretty systematic in terms of how we move through everything, but it works really, really great with kids because kids heal really quickly and they don't need a lot of input. So they don't have to fear a needle. We can do it with the laser. And what kid doesn't like a laser show to begin with? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then it works really great with cranial nerve stuff. So I think actually one of the examples for the sinus thing, and I took kind of a page out of your book here, Kevin, it was the cranial nerve 11, which was the accessory nerve for the head and neck muscles. And I was like, this person's locked up at the atlas there, right at the top of the spine. And so there's 2 points there, which you can activate with the needle. And I think I lasered them at that point on top of the needling to get some recognition in there. And then all of a sudden she's just like dumping stuff out of their sinuses. Yeah, that's amazing. Now, you obviously see a lot of crazy neurological stuff in your office. Do you notice, and anything goes when you reset the nervous system, do you notice things sometimes get a little worse before it gets better, or people will just have kind of weird symptoms for a day or two and then it will calm down? Yeah, in my practice currently, I'm not a big fan of drama. Drama, yeah. Yeah. I don't like a lot of drama in my practice. I don't feel like dealing with it, and I'm sure the patient doesn't feel like dealing with it either. Yeah. Usually nowadays, most of it is either the person might feel a little bit tired for 24 hours, or they feel like a burst of energy. And I always feel bad for the parents that bring the kids in who get that, because then the kid's like hanging from the ceiling. I used to have a practice where most naturopathic schools are like, yeah, no, man, you need to that person needs to feel like SHIT for a little while. And then, it like really hit home. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, like we were at a point when we were integrating a lot of homeopathy with the acupuncture. And with homeopathy, you see a lot of that kind of healing crisis, Herxheimer response. And we were having these Lyme patients who were herxing on the table, like in front of us. We would do something with the acupuncture, and within seconds, they were having a hard time putting words together. They were sweating. They were incredibly uncomfortable. And we're like, yeah, man, we're really making change. Like, how can you deny that acupuncture does nothing when instantly you can see all these autonomic shifts in somebody? It just rode the line a little bit too much. And it's just such a pain to explain that to a patient, and it's uncomfortable. So I've moved away from that and found smoother and smoother and smoother ways of doing that. So for most part, it's just, you might feel a little bit tired. Most people actually just like take a nap on the table. Yep. And then they feel like a little zenned out for the day. And then you just hope that they feel better. Everybody reacts differently to acupuncture as they do to chiropractic or any other kind of therapy, because everybody's a little bit different.
Did you have any injuries with martial arts and everything that acupuncture was able to help you out with?
Funny enough, I actually never got acupuncture until I was in acupuncture school.
Okay.
But I've had many injuries with martial arts.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this yesterday because I was thinking about this interview. It's funny because you don't see things on like the whole hindsight thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 14, my older sister was really incredibly sick with Lyme, Epstein-Barr. Like it just crashed her system. Like she had other things previous to that, but it really crashed her system and got her into a place where it was just not good. And my parents drove around the country with her, and she ended up in New Mexico after like 2 years. And she was maybe like 17 at the time. You know, nothing was getting her better. I mean, we're talking about a 5'1", 18-year-old girl who weighs like 54 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Jeez.
Like skeletal, right? And so weak, pale, couldn't hold down food, immune reactions to everything, like da. And my mom was like, okay, enough. Like I can't stomach this. So it brought her out to New Mexico, Santa Fe. And it was a team of a massage therapist, a homeopath who was doing NAET, which is like the allergy desensitization stuff.
Okay.
And acupuncture to get her better. And a year later, she was back up to weight. She was going to college and like put it all behind her. And it's so funny because that was such a prominent thing at the time in my head, but you kind of put that stuff behind you. And then I was remarking in my head about it. I was like, wow, those are like a lot of the cases that I'm treating are exactly like I was like, damn, okay. So it's like,
that's very cool.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, Roberto, if you had one piece of advice that you would like to gift the audience that's really resonated with you over the years, could be anything, what would it be?
I always say to people, stick to the big five. Again, the body's incredibly complicated, but it's really meant to run on simple instructions. So the big five are: one, have good food, right? We're placed on this earth, and there's other things on this earth that are supposed to feed us and help us heal. Dogs do it. Other animals do it. Every other animal on the planet heals off of food. So get the good food in. Mm-hmm. Stop eating the crap. Right? Number two, get good water, get good hydration. Gatorade doesn't count. Sometimes coconut water is just a little bit too much sugar, right? So get good sleep, right?
Yeah.
Try to arrange your day so you don't have to wake up with an alarm clock. It would be ideal, but I know that's difficult for most people. Four would be get good movement. The body needs to move.
Yeah.
And you'll see that a lot from a lymphatic standpoint, where the lymph doesn't have a heart, right? Your blood has a heart to pump it. The lymph doesn't. And you need to get all the garbage out of your body. So you need to move. Your joints need to move. The body's meant to move. Spine's meant to move. Everything needs to move. So get good food, get good water, get good sleep, get good movement. And the last one is have good relationships, right? We're supposed to be social creatures. Talk to your family, talk to your friends, get the stress off your body. You see these cancer cases that have spontaneous remission because they just got their life in order, man. They started hanging out with their friends again. They started getting sleep. They stopped worrying about stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like most of our country is doing some serious damage in 4 to 5 of those at least. Yeah. It's just, that makes sense. I mean, even movement, nobody's moving. Everybody's sitting at desks all day. They're commuting home and then they're sitting down and watching TV and they start it all over again. Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, you see the movement thing is its own discussion. I mean, you have all these people who don't move at all and then they move too much on the weekend, like the weekend CrossFitters. Yeah. They're like, I don't understand why I'm having heart trouble and my knees are blowing out. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Oh, man, yeah. Well, Roberto, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed this episode. I'd love to have you back on anytime.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'd love to come back. You're doing great things. Keep it up.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.